There is a moment in life when clarity arrives without warning. It does not come softly. It crashes into your mind like cold water poured over your head. You look around the room you sit in. You scroll through the names inside your phone. You think about the people you believed were part of your future, and a realization appears that changes everything. No one is coming. No one is going to rescue you from the position you are in right now. No one will invest their time into the vision that lives inside your mind. No one will push you forward when exhaustion begins to slow your steps. And if you collapse under the weight of your own ambition, there will be no hands waiting to catch you before you fall. For most people, this moment becomes the beginning of despair. It feels like abandonment. It feels like betrayal by a world that promised connection and support. They feel alone and misunderstood, asking why they must carry their dreams without help. But for a rare minority, this moment becomes something else entirely. It becomes a rebirth. Those who possess real strength do not see isolation as tragedy. They see it as purification. The illusions burn away and only reality remains. The truth becomes impossible to ignore. If anything meaningful will be built in this life, it will be built by your own hands. You are here because you have already felt the weight of this realization. You have felt the pressure of ambition that the people around you cannot understand. You are tired of explaining ideas that sound impossible to those who never attempt anything difficult. You are exhausted from waiting for encouragement that never arrives. The waiting must end. The belief that success requires support is one of the most destructive myths society teaches. Generations grow up believing they need approval before action. They are told that community is necessary for achievement and that progress requires permission from others. But history shows a different pattern. The individuals who altered the course of the world were rarely surrounded by encouragement. They were often misunderstood. Many of them walked long periods of their journey completely alone. They did not treat isolation as weakness. They treated it as freedom. When you depend on other people for momentum, you give them authority over your future. You allow their moods, fears, and limitations to influence decisions that belong only to you. Every request for support becomes a quiet surrender of control. The moment you seek validation from someone else, you invite them into your destiny. Think carefully about what happens when someone helps you. Assistance is rarely neutral. Support creates obligation. The person who gives you resources expects something in return. The person who believes in you begins to feel ownership over your direction. Even emotional encouragement carries hidden influence. The same person who lifts your spirits today can withdraw that support tomorrow and leave you doubting yourself. What you thought was protection becomes limitation. A safety net can also be a cage. It catches you when you fall, but it also keeps you from flying too far. It ties your progress to the approval of others. It slows your movement until you match the comfort level of the people around you. Many people never succeed because they spend their energy searching for someone to believe in them instead of becoming someone who believes in themselves. You dilute your ideas to make them easier for others to accept. You soften your ambition so it does not threaten the comfort of those who watch you. You hesitate because you are waiting for applause that will never arrive. This pattern ends the moment you accept what can be called the 0 point. The 0 point is the moment you confront your reality without illusion. You look at your bank account. You examine your resources. You review the contacts in your life. And you realize that everything ahead of you must be built by your own effort. Most people panic when they reach this point. They believe they are standing on the edge of an empty void. But the 0 point is actually the beginning of power. When you have no support, you also have no masters. When no one helped you climb, no one has the authority to pull you down. If you build something entirely alone, every piece of it belongs to you. This is the cold clarity that separates the rare individual from the ordinary one. The average person fears the empty room. The disciplined mind sees opportunity inside it. An empty space cannot interfere with your direction. It cannot argue with your decisions. It cannot dilute your vision. Isolation removes noise. Imagine a general standing on a battlefield who suddenly discovers that his entire army has disappeared. Most people would surrender immediately. They would accept defeat because the numbers are no longer in their favor. But a different kind of mind reacts differently. Instead of mourning the lost soldiers, the general begins analyzing the terrain. He studies the shadows. He realizes something powerful. One person moving silently is far more unpredictable than an army marching loudly across open ground. The lone strategist becomes invisible and dangerous. Speed replaces bureaucracy. Decisions happen instantly because there is no committee to convince. The general adapts quickly because he does not have to coordinate thousands of people. What appears to be weakness becomes advantage. Your isolation forces the same transformation. Without support, you cannot rely on comfort. Without a team, you cannot hide behind group effort. Every victory becomes a product of your own ability. This pressure forces growth. Large organizations move slowly because they are built from layers of approval and hesitation. Individuals moving alone can change direction instantly. You can transform your life in a single focused hour because no one needs to approve your decision. You do not need a board of advisors. You need a mirror and the courage to examine yourself honestly inside it. Stop treating your isolation as punishment. It may be the greatest protection you have ever received. The absence of support removes the weak influences that would have slowed your progress. It removes people who would have doubted you during the difficult stages of growth. It removes the fake allies who would celebrate your success only after it became profitable. Isolation filters out the noise of mediocrity. It protects you from the gravity of other people's fear. It removes voices that would encourage you to lower your ambitions until they match the comfort level of the crowd. When the room is empty, the only voice left is your own. That silence may feel intimidating at first, but it is also the environment where real strategy begins to form. The absence of distraction allows clarity to emerge. Inside that silence, you begin to understand something important. The person responsible for your future has always been standing in front of you. You. Once you accept that no one is coming, something inside your mind shifts. The energy you once spent searching for support begins turning inward. Instead of asking who will help you, you begin asking what you must become. This is where the real transformation begins. The first stage is what can be called the ghost phase. When you have no support, you also have no audience. Without an audience, there is no reason to perform. You stop announcing your intentions. You stop explaining your plans. You move quietly through the world while your work happens in silence. Most people sabotage themselves long before they begin. They receive an idea and immediately share it with someone else, a friend, a partner, a co-worker. They describe the dream out loud, painting pictures of the future before they have built anything in the present. The response they receive often carries doubt disguised as concern. That sounds difficult. Are you sure you want to do that? Maybe you should wait until you are more stable. The moment those words enter your mind, the momentum begins leaking away. Confidence becomes diluted by hesitation. Energy that should have been used for action disappears into discussion. There is another hidden danger in talking about your goals. When you describe your ambitions out loud, Your brain rewards you with a small sense of accomplishment. You feel the pleasure of imagined success. You experience recognition before you have earned it. Your mind begins confusing conversation with achievement. The ghost avoids this trap entirely. The ghost does not speak about future victories. The ghost moves silently. Ambition remains private, contained inside the mind like pressure building inside a sealed chamber. That pressure becomes fuel. When you cannot release your goals through conversation, the energy must go somewhere else. It transforms into work. Restlessness appears. Sleep becomes lighter. The mind searches constantly for progress because there is no other outlet. You stop performing ambition and begin living it. Friends may think you have disappeared. Family members may ask why you have become distant. They will try to create explanations for your silence. Let them wonder. Misunderstanding is part of the process. When people cannot see what you are building, they will invent stories to fill the silence. They will assume something is wrong because they cannot imagine the discipline required to disappear from the noise of the world. Their confusion is evidence that the ghost phase is working. You are removing yourself from the theater of ambition where everyone talks and few produce anything of value. Instead of announcing your intentions, you build quietly until the results speak for you. During this stage, your greatest advantage is immersion. Without constant social obligations, you gain the rare ability to focus deeply. While others divide their attention between conversations, notifications, and distractions, you move into long periods of uninterrupted work. Hours pass without interruption. Your mind sinks deeper into the craft you are building. Skills sharpen because repetition becomes constant. Knowledge accumulates because curiosity has time to explore every detail. Obsession becomes your ally. The world often treats obsession as a flaw. It is labeled unhealthy or extreme. But history shows that excellence rarely comes from moderation. Mastery demands intensity that ordinary people cannot sustain. When you have no support network demanding your attention, you are free to pursue that intensity. You read more than others. You practice longer. You analyze your field until you understand patterns invisible to casual observers. While the world relaxes, you are refining. This process slowly turns competence into dominance. At first, no one notices. Results appear gradually. Small improvements accumulate quietly. But eventually something changes. Your ability becomes undeniable. When that moment arrives, something ironic happens. The same people who ignored you before begin appearing again. They suddenly recognize the value of what you built. They speak as if they always believed in you. But you remember the empty room. You remember the nights when your phone remained silent. You remember the long hours when doubt tried to convince you that quitting would be easier. That memory becomes armor. Before reaching that stage, however, there is a darker period that must be crossed. To walk this path, you must grieve. This is the reality that most motivational messages avoid. Building something alone carries emotional weight. The version of life you once imagined disappears. You expected encouragement. You expected shared enthusiasm. Instead, you discovered silence. You must accept the loss of that imagined support. You must bury the belief that others will walk beside you while you chase something larger than their comfort. This grief is not weakness. It is a natural response to the collapse of illusion. There will be nights when you question everything. You will stare at the ceiling wondering whether the people around you were right all along. Maybe your ambition is unrealistic. Maybe the path you chose leads nowhere. These thoughts arrive because you are walking through what can be called the wilderness. You have left the familiar comfort of the herd, but you have not yet reached the territory where success becomes visible. You exist between identities. The person you used to be is gone, and the person you are becoming has not fully emerged. This is the valley where many people return to the crowd. The herd offers warmth and approval. It provides reassurance that nothing difficult will be required. Returning would remove the uncertainty you feel, but returning would also destroy the transformation already underway. Once you see the truth about dependence, you cannot pretend ignorance again. You understand that comfort often comes at the cost of potential. Moving forward requires a different kind of discipline. You must become your own authority. Each morning you wake up and look at your reflection. That reflection becomes your teacher, your critic, your source of direction. When motivation fades, you create it. When doubt appears, you confront it. You become both commander and soldier. There will be moments when the weaker part of your mind wants to surrender. It wants rest. It wants reassurance. It wants someone else to tell you that continuing will be worth the effort. The stronger part must answer. Stand up, continue. This is the path you chose. Over time, this internal dialogue changes you. The voice of hesitation grows quieter. The voice of discipline becomes stronger. Eventually, the commander replaces the weaker version completely. What remains is a person capable of directing their own life without waiting for permission. This is the essence of sovereignty. When you reach this point, isolation no longer feels like punishment. It becomes a source of control. Every decision belongs entirely to you. Every step forward reflects your own will rather than the expectations of others. The person who once needed encouragement disappears. In his place stands someone who generates it internally. And once that shift happens, the journey ahead becomes something entirely different. Once you cross the wilderness and the commander inside you becomes stronger than the voice of doubt, the path changes again. You stop seeing your isolation as a temporary condition. You begin to recognize it as a strategic position. Most people are alone by accident. They drift into loneliness because life pushes them there. They resist it, complain about it, and search constantly for ways to escape it. But the person who understands power chooses isolation deliberately. You cut the cords that tie you to people who drain your energy. You remove yourself from circles where ambition is mocked or minimized. Instead of filling your time with social noise, you sit with the silence long enough for your own mind to become clear. At first, that silence feels loud. Thoughts rise aggressively. Old voices from your past appear in your head. A teacher who once told you that you were unrealistic. A relative who warned you not to aim too high. Friends who laughed when you spoke about your plans. Those voices repeat the same message. You are alone. Something must be wrong with you. Do not run from those thoughts. Observe them, study them like an outside witness. Ask where they came from. Most of them were planted years ago by people who had already surrendered their own ambitions. They are echoes of other people's limitations. When you sit in silence long enough, those echoes begin to fade. Eventually, something else becomes audible. Beneath the noise of outside influence, there is a quieter signal. Your own mind. It begins offering ideas without interruption. Strategies appear that would have been drowned out by conversation. You begin noticing patterns in your work and in the world around you. This is why deep thinking rarely happens in crowded environments. Great ideas require space. Collaboration can be useful once something already exists, but creation almost always begins in solitude. The mind requires uninterrupted time to explore possibilities. When opinions from others constantly interrupt that process, originality disappears. Solitude gives you the ability to hear yourself think. There is also a practical advantage to building alone. Every additional person involved in a project introduces complexity. Human beings are unpredictable variables. They become tired. They lose motivation. Their priorities shift depending on circumstances. When your progress depends on other people remaining consistent, you build your future on unstable ground. If a partner loses interest, your momentum collapses. If a collaborator changes direction, your plan must change with them. The more people involved, the more fragile the structure becomes. This is why many partnerships dissolve even when they begin with excitement. Independence removes that vulnerability. When you build something alone, every decision happens quickly. You do not wait for approval. You do not negotiate every step. Progress becomes faster because there are fewer obstacles between idea and action. This independence also forces you to become more capable. Without outside help, you must learn everything necessary for your progress. You study marketing because no one else will do it for you. You learn strategy, finance, persuasion, and psychology because every part of the structure depends on your understanding. Over time, you become a rare type of individual, not a specialist who performs one task well, but a builder who understands the entire system. Specialists can be replaced easily. The person who built the entire structure from the foundation cannot. This process turns you into a weapon of competence. Each obstacle becomes education. Each mistake becomes information you carry forward. Instead of outsourcing your problems to others, you solve them yourself and gain permanent knowledge in the process. This is how true capability is forged. Eventually, the results begin to show. The work you performed quietly starts producing visible outcomes. Income grows. Skill becomes obvious. Confidence begins radiating from your presence because you know exactly what you endured to reach this point. Then something predictable happens. People return. The same individuals who once dismissed your ideas appear again with different attitudes. They smile more warmly. They speak about your progress with pride as if they were part of it. Some will even attempt to rewrite the past. They will say they always believed in you. This moment becomes one of the most dangerous stages of the journey. The old version of you, the one who once craved approval, will feel tempted to welcome them back without hesitation. After so much silence, even small validation can feel powerful. But you must remember the empty room. Remember the long nights when encouragement never arrived. Remember the discipline required to continue when nobody was watching. That memory protects you. Handling this stage requires something that can be called strategic grace. You do not attack the people who returned. You do not insult them or seek revenge for their absence. You simply maintain distance. You treat them politely but without dependence. They can see your success, but they cannot claim ownership of it. They can admire what you built, but they cannot rewrite the story of how it happened. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. Human beings often support success only after it becomes obvious. They are drawn to strength and stability. When someone is struggling, most people hesitate to invest their time or belief. Understanding this does not require anger. It simply requires realism. You carried the stones alone, so the structure belongs to you. And that realization creates a form of peace that is difficult to describe. When you know that your achievements came from your own discipline, your confidence becomes unshakable. If everything disappeared tomorrow, you would rebuild it again. Because the real asset was never the money or the recognition. The asset was you. Eventually, something else begins to happen. Once you no longer need support from others, you become capable of offering it to those who truly deserve it. You recognize the signs of someone who is walking the same lonely path you once walked. The hunger in their eyes looks familiar. The silence surrounding them reminds you of your own early struggle. Now you can become the presence you once wished existed, but you do it carefully. You do not rescue people who refuse to help themselves. You invest only in those who demonstrate discipline and commitment. Support becomes a strategic decision rather than an emotional reaction. In this way, the cycle continues. Your isolation produced strength. That strength eventually creates opportunities for others who show the same determination. But you never forget the origin of your power. It began in a silent room where nobody believed in you except yourself. That moment was not abandonment. It was initiation. And the person who walked through it alone emerged as something the crowd cannot easily understand or control.